Up and running. Now let me see if I can pull this up on here. Well, I guess it takes a few seconds, so it won't be instantaneous. I get all these recipes on Facebook. Cajun grilled chicken with Alabama white sauce.
Oh, that just sounds so good.
It does, except for Alabama. But other than that, yes, it sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Takes about 20 seconds to get through.
Green chilies are not too bad.
Where are we?
Put some.
It is funny what I see when I'm trying to find this thing. All right, there we are. There we are. I'm up, but I'm not the first one up. Somebody else is already on. All right. Welcome to those of you who are watching online, whether you're watching live or you might be watching a recording. Welcome to those of you who are in the room. I'm glad to see y'all too. So,
We're glad to be here.
does somebody need to go check on Beverly?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, you're going to miss the birthdays, but that's okay. Anybody got a birthday that you want to brag about today? Family or friends? I've got some good old friends I want to say happy birthday to. And they'll appreciate me shouting them out. So,
Is one on Patsy?
okay. No, Patsy's birthday was last week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Patsy Parker, by the way. She is not in here. I will call her name 3 more times because she's not in here. I hope she pulls this up and watches. Patsy Parker.
Patsy Parker.
That was 2. That was 2. Or was that 3? Did I call Patsy Parker's name already? Oh, there we go. Okay. She's going to leave the church one day because she's going to be mad at me. All right.
Oh, you can get the stinky.
I've got a few birthdays. Now, I apologize because I'm not going to be able to talk very loud. This is so weird because last week in the office, we had some sickness going on, and they were talking about how sudden it was. And I was literally about a little over halfway finished with Bible study last week, and I felt it just pop in my throat all of a sudden. And so if you were here, if you're paying close attention, I was coughing more toward the end and not at all at the beginning, and that's why. Well, I thought, oh, here it is. You know, it's going to last me through the weekend. I sure hope that I can get over this and by Sunday and all that kind of stuff. Well, the next day I was fine. On Thursday, I was A-okay. No more problems until this morning when I woke up and I thought, there is something in my throat, and I've been coughing all day. Not fun. So anyway, I'm not going to talk loud. And who knows, that might help y'all out because I might not talk long. I can't make that promise, but anyway. But I do have some birthdays I want to share with you that you may or may not care about. The first birthday on this particular date, happy birthday in 1802 to Victor Hugo. Andrea, you are our resident literary specialist. Victor Hugo, 2 things very famous. Can you name them? Either one of them?
I want to say Moby Dick, but I don't think that's it.
No, The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Okay, yeah.
And
Hunchback, humpback, well, you know, hey.
and Les Miserables. Les Miserables, yes. Wrote both of those. He was born this date in 1802 in France. He died in 1885, so he lived a long life. Let's see. I can't see what everybody's wearing in here, but yes, on this date in 1829, Levi Strauss was born. Of course, he was his company was the first to manufacture blue jeans, and he was born in Bavaria in Germany. Yeah, he was a German American. He died in 1902. In 1908, oh goodness, this is a good one. 1908, happy birthday to Tex Avery. Any guesses as to who that is? He's an American cartoonist. He brought to us.
He's one of the Looney Tunes guys.
He brought to us Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Porky Pig and Elmer Fudd and all those good folks.
All the good ones.
So, yeah. He was born in Taylor, Texas. And he didn't die until 1980. So, fairly,
Wow.
yeah. For those of you who've been around for a little bit longer, 1916, happy birthday to Jackie Gleason. He was born in Brooklyn on this date. He died in 1987. 1928, y'all may not care about this, but I liked his music anyway. 1928, happy birthday to Fats Domino. He was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. Died in 2017, so he hasn't been gone from us for very long. Y'all got to know this one. 1932, can't believe somebody didn't bring this one up to begin with. Happy birthday to Johnny Cash. Yeah. He was born in Kingsland, Arkansas. Died in 2003. And then, if you're into politics, even if you didn't vote for him, still worth mentioning, 1958, happy birthday to Tim Kaine, who was the vice president nominee for the Democratic ticket this past year. And he's the senator from Virginia. He was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. Got 3 deaths to bring to your attention. In 1903, on this date, Richard Gordon Gatling died. He was an American inventor. He invented the Gatling gun, the first hand-cranked machine gun. Anyway, he died at the hands of at the age of 84. The next 2, as far as progressing in equality among the races, in 1913, Bud Fowler died. He is the earliest known black player in organized professional baseball. So he was 54 when he died in 1913. And then it was also on that date, a lot more recently, in 2015, that Earl Lloyd died. And his claim to fame is he was the first black player to play in the NBA. So, and he was 86 when he died. Just a few events. I got 5 events for you for the day that I thought were interesting. So really kind of a slow news day. It was this date in 1616 that the Roman Inquisition delivered an injunction to Galileo, the astronomer, to renounce, demanding that he deny heliocentrism. Now, we just talked about heliocentrism. When was this? It was just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Yes. Helio meaning the sun, central meaning the center. That means that the planets revolve around the sun, not everything revolving around the earth. And that's the problem when the church tries to get outside of its of what we're supposed to be doing. And that's what Galileo taught, and they said, you renounce that or else we're going to excommunicate you. So anyway, this date in 1936, Hitler introduced Ferdinand Porsche's Volkswagen. So I had a Volkswagen that was cool. I just hate that it was connected to Hitler, but whatever. Okay, you need to guess the year, right? You're going to guess the year on this.
2020.
And since it goes in order, it will be after 1936, okay? It was the last total eclipse of the sun in the continental United States in the 20th century. When was the last time that we had a total eclipse of the sun in the continental United States in the 20th century?
1980 something,
1980 something, 1880 what?
85.
Okay, we got 85. Any other guesses?
Total eclipse of the sun in the United States.
In the 20th.
In the 20th century.
The last
So 19 something. Anybody guesses? Got it 1985,
1990.
1990. Actually, Andrew, you weren't too far off. It was 1979. So happened on this date in 1979. Also on this date, and I know some of y'all didn't care, but hey, I was a youngin', so I cared. And it was a big deal, actually, in music history. 1983, Michael Jackson's Thriller hit the #1 on the charts. Any guesses as to how long it stayed there?
A really long time.
It was 37 weeks that it stayed at number one. That's a long time. That's almost a full year. And then we we know about 9/11 and all that, but what doesn't get a whole lot of press after 9/11 because of the magnitude of 9/11 is that was not the first attempt. It was on this date in 1993 that the World Trade Center was bombed the first time, and it was with a car bomb in a truck parked underneath the World Trade Center, and killed one person, injured about 1,000 people. But of course, they stayed standing for another 3 years at least. I mean, 8 years at least. But anyway, on this date in 1993, there you go. That's what happened on this date. All right. What questions do you have about the book of Revelation? We are in Revelation chapter 16, if you want to turn over there. Revelation chapter 16. We have finished 6 out of the 7 bowl judgments. We are going to cover the last bowl judgment. Now, if you remember, there are 3 sets of judgments that unfold chronologically: the seal judgments, the trumpet judgments, and then the bowl judgments. And each of those sets of judgments have 7 judgments within them. And so we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, you should say it's about time after a year and a half. But we've covered a lot of ground. We're coming very close to the end of the time of the tribulation, like extremely close. Now, we don't know. We don't have a timeline that is written out for us, but it is plausible to say, let's just put it that way. I'm not going to say it's probable, again, because we don't have anything to indicate that. But it is plausible for us to see that we are within at least weeks, maybe even days, from the end of the tribulation by the time we get to the 7th bowl judgment. So it's a pretty significant point that we're at, right? At which we are. Sorry, Mom. So, so it's pretty significant, and we have covered through verse 12 of chapter 16. Actually, we've covered through 16, verse 16 of chapter 16, and those are the bowl judgments. 6 of them, as they've unfolded very quickly. The sixth bowl judgment was him drying up the great river, the Euphrates River, so that the armies that were going to fight against God in the east could make their way to Jerusalem, to Israel, in order to fight against God and his army. So he's giving them what they asked for. They want a battle. They want to fight. God says, hey, if you want to fight, I'll give it to you. And so he makes the way for them to come. We see that that the unholy Trinity has deceiving words that rallies these troops to go against God among the nations. And they're getting ready to gather in verse 16 at the place in Hebrew which is called Har Magedon, or Armageddon. So that brings us to verse 17. The 7th angel, the 7th bowl. Here's what it says. The 7th angel poured out his bowl upon the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, "It is done." Now, first of all, notice that this bowl is poured out in the air. All of the judgments that we have seen so far, especially even here in the last set of judgments in the bowl judgments, they've affected the land, they've affected water, they've affected the cosmos with the sun and all of that. And there will be no place on earth that will go untouched by these judgments. And so The last one to hit is the air. And this bowl is poured out on the air. And notice the words, it is done. Meaning that while God's enemies are still here, they're still walking, they're still alive, and all that, basically, the story's over. You know, fat lady singing. I mean, you can go home now because this is over. It is a done deal even before it's a done deal. Now, it is done is the grammatical construct there in Greek simply indicates that it is something that is done at a moment in time, but it has effects that reverberate past that moment in time. So, this is very, what's the word? Very much connected to similar words that we have heard before. What are those words? It is finished. What Jesus said while he was up on the cross. Now, again, in the same instance there, that wasn't right as he died. You know, he still lived a little bit further because it seems like there was one more statement of his after that. I didn't prepare that, but it seems like that's the case. I could be wrong. But it is reminiscent. There's the word. How about that for a big word for the night? It is reminiscent of Jesus's, it is finished. And they are very much connected, but in contrast, not comparison. When Jesus said it, he was declaring that God's forgiveness was available to repentant sinners. And here it is being pronounced to indicate that God's judgment will be falling upon unrepentant sinners. So it is very much in contrast, but it's the same idea. In fact, as I was thinking about that, I want to preach a sermon, something about that, you know. So y'all might be hearing about that sometime soon. I guess it'll be after Easter because I've got between now and Easter set. But anyway. So it is done. I mean, this is over with. Turn out the light, the party's over. Verse 18, there were flashes of lightning and sounds and peals of thunder, which are very common in both the Old and the New Testament in their pronouncements of judgment when God is judging. And why not? I mean, thunder's scary, man. And like my dogs run and hide. And you can say all you want to, oh, it's not lightning, nothing's going to happen to you, it's just a bunch of noise or whatever. But if it's loud enough, it's scary, you know? And so it's connected to judgment, and so that's why it's brought up here. There was a great earthquake, such as there had not been since man came to be upon the earth. So great an earthquake was it, and so mighty. So we can talk about earthquakes and all the devastation that they have caused and the Richter scale and those kinds of things. But there will be none that will compare to this, especially when we consider the description of what happens as a result of these earthquakes coming up. Okay? So let's look and see what happens. In verse 19, it says, the great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. What on earth does all that mean? I'm glad you asked. It means that this is a description of the devastation that this earthquake will bring. Now, the great city, there are some commentators who are a lot smarter than I am. So take that for what it's worth. If you read those guys and what they tell you makes a lot more sense than what I'm about to tell you, run with it, okay? That's fine. You won't hurt my feelings because they're smarter than I am. But there are some who will say that this is talking about Babylon. the city of Babylon, which is the hub for Antichrist's rule on the earth. But I don't believe that's so, and there are several reasons. And one is that it differentiates here. It says Babylon the Great was remembered before God. It talks about the great city, and then it talks about Babylon the Great as if they're two different places. So it seems to indicate something, a different place other than that. Not only that, but prior to this, and I wish I had memorized the reference. Prior to this, a couple of chapters earlier, the great city was referenced, and it was very clearly a reference to Jerusalem. So that we were talking about Jerusalem, it was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. So that Jerusalem is split up, very different than what it is right now. All the other cities are in rubble. Now you got to think, you're not talking about a localized something where, it's just out in California and San Francisco is now part of the, Pacific Ocean or whatever we're talking about those things. You're not talking about a localized thing. You're talking about cities all across the world are now rubble. They fell. Now, this is reminiscent. This is not, okay, this is very cool. Y'all ready for this? This is not the first time that we've read about this. That is, if you read the Bible from front to back, okay? Which some people do it, some people don't, whatever. But if you have, we've read about this before. And so if you don't mind making a mark in the margins of your Bible, I've done that. I've put it in here. You may want to put down Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14, and if you want to turn there, you can, because we're going to read them. Zechariah chapter 14, and Zechariah is not all that hard to find. Zephaniah is. Zechariah is not all that hard because it's one of the prophetic books in the Old Testament that's talking about the end of time. So it's one of the last three in the Old Testament. Now, Zechariah chapter 14, beginning in verse 4, is going to describe the same event. In that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east. And so, Glenn, I know you've been there. I don't know if anybody else has been there, but that's true. So, he's going to stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from east to west by a very large valley. There's going to be we see in Revelation that it's split into three parts, and one of those parts is going to be Mount of Olives, is split open. So that half of the mountain will move toward the north, and the other half toward the south. You will flee by the valley on my mountains, for the valley of the mountains will reach to Azel. Yes, you will flee just as you fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. So see, he is descending down, getting ready for the battle of Armageddon. In that day there will be no light, the luminaries will dwindle, for it will be a unique day which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but it will come about at the evening time there will be light. In that day living waters will flow out of Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea. What is to the east? What sea is to the east of Jerusalem? You know your geography? It's the Dead Sea. The other half toward the western sea. What is to the west of Jerusalem? Mediterranean Sea. So, for something to flow on both sides, and this is important, okay, for what we're going to get to when we get back to Revelation. For something to flow from something else, I would like to be able to ask the question, but I won't be able to ask it intelligently, so I'll just go ahead and tell you. For something to flow from one thing to another, it has to be above that other thing, right? It's not going to flow uphill. So Jerusalem is going to be above these other two things. That's important when it points out that it's flowing to both sides. It will be in summer as well as in winter. And the Lord will be king over all the earth, and that day the Lord will be the only one, and his name the only one. Basically, he's already saying, he's already blowing the suspense because God wins. And all the land will be changed into a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. So everything's going to be a plain, but Jerusalem will rise and remain on its site from Benjamin's gate as far as the first gate, as the place of the first gate to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses. That doesn't matter. I'm just saying Jerusalem is going to be still on its perch. And everything around it will be flat. Turn back to Revelation chapter 16. What do you think it means in verse 20 when he says, every island fled away? What is an island? Like in simplest terms, what's an island?
A landmass surrounded by water.
Okay, it's landmass surrounded by water. Think below. An island is nothing more than a mountain in the ocean. That's all it is. It rises up above the water, but it's a mountain in the sea. They won't be there anymore. And the mountains were not found. Why? Because you suddenly can't see a mountain? Who can't see a mountain? Everybody can see a mountain if you can see anything. You can't see it because it won't be there. Everything is flat except for one place. Where is that? Jerusalem. That's it. And why is that? Because that is where Jesus will come back and set up his throne. He will be above it all. That's the picture that we're seeing. He is setting the framework for the battle to take place, is what we read in Zechariah. Remember, all his army is going to come down with him into Jerusalem. He's going to take up Jerusalem. He's going to sit on the throne. He's going to take it. It's going to be his. Everybody's going to be gathering for war. And he's like, hey, bring it on, buddy. I got you. And Zechariah has already told us he's going to win. Now, let me just tell you, chapters 17 through 19, here's here's another spoiler alert. 17 through 19 is telling us that Jesus is going to win. It's just going to get into more detail. So, that'll be fun, won't it? We talk about the Battle of Armageddon. So, that's what we're looking at. That is what has happened. That is what the seventh bowl judgment has been, and it has set things in motion. When it says it is done, he's basically saying, watch, let me show you how I, the Lord God, will set the stage for the ending to be happening. And, of course, then, here's where it affects people in a horrible, horrible way in verse 21. And huge hailstones, about 100 pounds each. Now, 100 pounds is about, it's roughly equivalent to what a healthy male person could carry, maximum. It is, 100 pounds is heavy. Sometimes Glenn over here will go get, these water things that we have out here, the water fountains that we have. Got those jugs that you put in upside down in them and all that. And they're about 35 pounds. And you get one of those in both hands, and it's pulling at your shoulder sockets and all that kind of stuff. And you might could grab one more, and you're struggling to move it. That's 105 pounds. 100 pounds is a lot, but it's about what one male person could carry. That's kind of what they estimated in ancient days. And so you compare that to, the best of my knowledge now, I guess y'all can Google this and tell me if I'm wrong, but the largest hailstones, anybody want to take a guess? Hey, we like taking guesses. What is the weight of the largest hailstone hailstones that have been measured to this point? Anybody want to take a guess?
I don't know, let's look it up.
Grapefruit?
Maybe
And
a
then
couple
they say
pounds at
grapefruit.
most.
What now?
Maybe a couple of pounds.
2 pounds. It's the largest ones that have been recorded.
2 pounds?
2 pounds.
2.25 pounds in Bangladesh.
Okay. Bangladesh. They win. Okay.
That was the heaviest, and said the largest one was recorded in 8 inches in diameter, fell in South Dakota.
Huh. Okay. So 2.2 pounds. 2.25?
Yes.
2.25 pounds. The biggest one. Until now. Until the bowl judgment comes. And they will be 100 pounds apiece. Now, again, this is, you just think through the story that we've been reading. And what do you think the earthquake did? What do we say the earthquake did? It flattened everything. It flattened the earth, but it also leveled all the cities, right? So that the cities were nothing but rubble. So where do you think the people will go to hide from 100-pound hailstones that are falling on their heads?
In the rubble?
There's no place. There isn't any place. Everything is torn down. Yeah. And so, yeah, let's say they crawl underneath the rubble, and then you have 100-pound boulders falling on top of that. There's no good solution. And so this is horrid. And so, again, we said this a couple of weeks ago, and I think again last week. No, not last week. A couple of weeks ago. That when something like that is happening, and you know that it's God, you would think they would ask for mercy. But they are so entrenched in the false religion of the worship of Antichrist. They are so dedicated to him that instead of repenting, they blaspheme the God of heaven. Now, again, not only does that point to the depth of their sinfulness and just how lostness is, but oh gosh, what was I about to say? Poof, gone. But it also reveals that they fully understood by now. And we've seen steps of this along the way in the different judgments, that they fully understood that this was coming from God. They knew it. There was no other way to explain this. And yet they shook their fist at God. So anyway, the plague, it was extremely severe. There was no place to run, no place to hide. You get hit with one of these hailstones, you're a goner. It hurts. So everything is setting up for this final battle. And it's that we'll talk about in the next several weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take to get through 19. I'm trying. Y'all wanted specifics. I gave you specifics. So anyway. Okay. That is all I have prepared for tonight, but do you have any questions? Are there any questions about not just about tonight, but anything that we've talked about? Because now, remember, we are finished with all the judgments. All 3 sets, all 7 of each 3 sets. So now's a good time if you have any questions. If you got any questions at home, if you're watching this, then you can put them in the comments section. I'd encourage you to go ahead and start doing that. It'll take you a few minutes to type it up, even if you talk to text, and then it'll take a few seconds for it to get over here. So any questions, any comments, anything?
But let me ask you this,
Okay.
because all the 7 sets of judgments, and that each one has been progressively worse than the last,
And more rapid, yes?
and more rapid, and it takes, when you think about it, 7 years is really not a lot of time. But when Jesus comes and he's prepared, that's not even the last of the bad stuff because the big battle hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's just really like scary for anybody who's left. And to think that and to think that there were, according to the scripture we've been reading, there's still gonna be people who are mad at God. All this, like, well, why didn't you just do what you were supposed to do?
So, for those of you who were not able to hear, she's basically just pointing out the truth that all these terrible things happening and so many people are going to die, and yet the people who actually survive, they're mad at God. And I want to add to that. Not only are they mad at God, not only have they seen everything that God can do in the sea and on the land and in the cosmos and in the air and in people's personal lives and the supernatural and all that kind of stuff. Here's how deceived lostness is. And I believe it's still, I think it's already true today, and I think it would be true of you and me if God had not opened up our eyes. I believe that every bit of our salvation is credited to God, and the fact that we understood something else is only because He allowed it. But the depth of their deceit is that not only are they going to blaspheme God, something within them is going to hear the rally cry to go fight against this God, and something inside of them is going to say, sounds like a good idea, let's go do that. And they are going to join the army that fights against this God that is doing all these things. That just, it kind of blows my mind.
Everything's already written down for them, what's gonna happen.
Yes, it's all written down, what was going to happen. They'll be able to look at it and see, oh yeah, this was written, at this point, 2,000 years ago. And it's all true. But still. And again, this goes back to the fact that something supernatural happening, a miraculous event happening, is not what is needed for people to be saved. Don't we really in our minds think that, man, if God would just, do this really cool thing, a lot of people see that and then they'll want to get saved and they'll all be saved too. Mm-mm. That is not the problem. The problem is not that God has not shown Himself. He has. And so it just reminds me of what Jesus said when the rich man and Lazarus parable, when the rich man says, just send somebody back from the dead so that they'll believe. And He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. He said they've got the law and the prophets. And if they're not going to listen, if they're not going to pay attention to this, a miracle's not going to do any good either. So really, we've got everything that we need. People say, well, why aren't there miracles today? Well, why should there be?
Well, these
We don't need
people, if they're not listening to the devastation that God's showing them that's gonna occur, they're not gonna listen to the good stuff either.
Mm-hmm.
They'll find some other way to explain it away.
Yeah. And that's what we do. We explain stuff away. So anyway. All right. What prayer request do we have?
My cousin Marcia Jones, her husband Will, is under hospice care, and Sarah talked to her probably an hour or so ago and said they don't expect him to last the rest of the week.
So Andrea's cousin's husband,
Right.
not expected to live past the week.
Here in Savannah.
Nancy asked us to pray for her sister and her mom. Linda McCrary has pneumonia, and Bobby Lynch is sick. And then she also, when she was in here, she was also talking about a little boy named Miles that she taught in Sunday school at a different church. And Miles is only 5 years old and part of a large family, and they all got sick, but he's not over his. He's got pneumonia, and he's fighting for his life right now. So, and then we want to pray for Richard Powell. And then, of course, want to pray for Alicia. Betty Powell stopped by yesterday, I think, and was just kind of giving a little brief update on Richard. He's got some kind of something going on in his leg that they can't figure out. So it's kind of one thing after another. So, nothing's come through online. Any other requests in the room? Nothing? All right. Glenn, would you mind closing us out, please, sir?
Just pray, Lord, thank you for today and the blessings of it, and for just the opportunities that we've had today to do the things that we've done, and then spend some time this evening here to study in your word and learning more each and every day. And thank you for your plan of salvation that we have, and everybody has the opportunity to be saved from all this horrendous events that will take place one day in the judgment to come. But while we have breath and while we are still here, Lord, help us continue to be your hands and feet, and share your message with those that we come in contact with each and every day. For the prayer request that's been mentioned, and maybe many others that are on hearts and minds that you know, Lord, and you know what they need, that you be free to work in their lives and to provide for them what they need for today and for the days to come, and be with family members as well as they are affected too, and somebody in their family is hurting. Just lift them up to you. Be free, Lord, to work in their lives and show your mercy and grace. And we just give you all the praise and all the honor and all the glory, for it's in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us online, and we will see you all Sunday, if not sooner. Have a great rest of the week.